So how do you explain Nick Foles' career?
Um,
So 27 tutties and 2 picks, quarterback rating 119 in that magical season under Chip Kelly.
yeah.
He had just been drafted 3rd round. He goes to the Pro Bowl, they win the division. The next season he struggles. He gets traded, then he's released. He bounces around. He finally signs in Philly as Carson Wentz backup.
Yeah.
Wentz gets hurt, and all of a sudden Foles marches him to a Super Bowl. He beats Tom Brady, and he wins the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
He then goes to 3 teams in 4 seasons, never does crap, and he retires.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
This is how I explain it. He was a good, and remember him in Arizona. He was a solid quarterback. So this isn't a fluke thing. Nick Foles could play the position. He had all the tools. He gets to Philadelphia, and Chip was running some stuff that, again, much like college, it took a little bit of time to figure out. And against bad teams, that offense gave people problems. And it was a very college-oriented offense. And it was something that Nick Foles fit right into. And we saw this as Chip went on. Once it got exposed, there was no other layer to it. It's like he had a really good fastball and people just caught up to the fastball and there was no changeup. There was no curveball. So that kind of ended up killing off Nick Foles. He played in a college system out of college and it was kind of lightning in a bottle. And we've seen this. Like, remember Derek Anderson made a Pro Bowl in Cleveland. Vince Young was Rookie of the Year. We've seen guys come in and play within the confines of a system or are really athletic and you can have a brief window of success. And it never was quite the same after that. But for that brief run in Philadelphia, what happened was, again, Nick Foles was a solid quarterback. He was like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type. And when he got there at the end of that run there, let's not forget that Philly was one of the 2 best teams in football. And they had oodles and noodles of talent around there. And he played within the confines of a system and he got hot. He went on a nice stretch. And yes, he did outduel Tom Brady. Although Tom Brady actually in that game, that was Tom Brady's best Super Bowl. He threw for 500 yards. It was just that New England couldn't stop Philadelphia.
So are we then saying that Ryan Fitzpatrick can get hot and win a Super Bowl?
Yes.
Because I feel like Foles is one of one in a sense that whether you label him a Ryan Fitzpatrick type starter, because Fitzpatrick was a starter.
Yes.
Or a perennial backup, whatever you label him, because he really was both in his career, which is rare. Usually we get an idea after 7 seasons of which a guy is. It's just you can't, like, he rose up in huge ways but couldn't sustain anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do with him.
I just view him again like if you wanted to throw out like a comp, like a Robert Ory type. He was, how about trying the best way to summarize this for me? He was a solid quarterback that had some opportunities, and by opportunities, 3 games. And in those 3 games, he rose to the occasion. But just because Robert Ory hits a big shot every now and then, Robert Ory was not a great player. He wasn't even a very good player. He just, because he was fortunate enough to play on good teams, he had opportunities, and in those moments, he didn't shrink from it.
Yeah. So I guess I guess the deal with Foles is that I think a lot of people think that if your starting quarterback goes down and you're in the playoffs, you're not. I mean, the backup is not taking you to the promised land.
I think it'd be interesting to see how many teams backups you would feel confident in having to take over.
Well, I mean, and I think 0. Like, in other words, there's a difference between a backup coming in and keeping you afloat and a backup coming in and winning Super Bowl MVP over Tom Brady.
But I do think there are candidates out there in the league who could do what Foles did.
Yes.
I mean,
like who?
Like Gardner Minshew, for one. Like he's a guy that's young enough, who's had enough success. He could string 3 games together if he needed to, if he was on the right team for it.
Yeah, see, and that's where I go.
I think
that's why I brought up Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick was not.
We think
he wasn't a starting quarterback. He was a bridge quarterback. He was who you brought in when there wasn't a better option. I think that, to me, if Ryan Fitzpatrick had been the backup quarterback in Philadelphia, they could have won that Super Bowl.
I thought that way about Sam Darnold with the Niners last year. Now he's going to be the starter in Minnesota this year, but that was one that fit for me too.
And like, it's so weird how, like, again, it's a serendipity sort of thing, because Nick Foles played 3 playoff games, right, that year. that they.
Did he play regular season games?
Yeah, he played a couple, and I'll look those up here. But I looked it up. So he played really well in the conference title game, and they blew out Minnesota, by the way, 38-7, and Nick went for 26-33, 350 3 tutties, no interceptions. But they blew out Minnesota. Minnesota wasn't even an option for him. I mean, they got pounded. And then of course they had the big game against New England where he went 28-43, 373, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And their defense couldn't stop New England. But again, couple breaks go your way. That wild card game, they beat Atlanta 15-10, and he only threw for 246 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Like think about that. Like that's a game that can go either way. And Foles didn't play great. He didn't play bad. But if they have a break that goes the other way and Atlanta beats them, none of this is Nick Foles is lost to history forever. Or if Carson Wentz doesn't get hurt, we never hear of Nick Foles. He's just another guy that had one year.
I think what's interesting too is, you look at that season he had with Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
His numbers were off the charts.
Yeah. They were really good.
And I just don't see like a Gardner Minshew suddenly having those kinds of numbers with anybody.
But I go back to, I think that was a product of a college quarterback in a college system that the NFL wasn't ready for.
Yeah. So it was just a one-off.
It was a one-off. It was lightning. Well,
in a maybe bottle. Nick Foles' entire career is a one-off. Somebody brought up Jeff Hostetler.
Yeah, Hostetler won.
But was he was the starter?
He was the starter because basically all year I think Phil Simms got hurt.
Yeah.
and he wasn't like a fill-in at the end or anything like that. I mean,
was he their backup quarterback?
I think he was the backup. You'd have to look up the circumstances because they won the Super Bowl with Phil Simms, and I believe Phil got hurt. I don't remember if he got hurt at the end of the year, and then Hostetler was the guy going into that season, or if Phil got hurt at the beginning of the year. But Hostetler, I believe, was their quarterback for the bulk of that year or all of it.
What about Tom Brady? Came in for Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah.
He was the backup.
He was the backup.
He did the job.
Well, a
lot of
guys are the backup at some point. But God. So that year with Chip was I want to look at that. I'm trying to look at some regular season numbers for him to see where they're at and like what their record was. So he went 8-2 with Chip.
Only started 10 games.
Yeah, only started 10 games.
Did he get hurt?
Well, I guess he played in 13 games, but yeah, only started 10. So my guess is the other guy someone else was the quarterback, and they went to Foles. But he threw 27 touchdowns, 2 picks, had a quarterback rating of 119.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, it's really unbelievable.
Yeah, he had a 10, but again, 10 game stretches. I'm not saying that isn't one of the better 10 game stretches, but it's weird. I'm telling you, you can go find these 8. It's usually more like 8, but you can find these stretches where seemingly good but not great quarterbacks have them, and you're like, holy hell! And then
I guess it was
reality comes crashing down.
I thought maybe it was the whole season. I didn't realize he only had 10
games,
10 starts.
Yeah,
I thought.
Starts.
Yeah, that was Vic. So Vic was Chip Kelly had Mike Vick. Yeah. They said Vic
was in Philly.
Vic had 6 starts and went 2-4. I don't know if they benched Vic or Vic got hurt, but that's when Foles came in.
Yeah. And then he never came anywhere near that again.
Except that he won a Super Bowl. So what you're saying is, I think to summarize all this, even borderline starting quarterbacks for small sample sizes on good teams can win a Super Bowl.
100%.
See, that's not something I would have thought before.
Well, I mean, there's a reason. I mean,
like when Tyrod Taylor came in, I think, right, for Lamar.
Yep.
I'm like, dude, they're not. It's it. They may win a game. They almost beat Cincinnati, but they're not going to win the Super Bowl with him.
Well, I know it's not a backup, but Nick Foles isn't a worse quarterback than Trent Dilfer. Brad Johnson won one in Tampa. I mean, Nick Foles was one of those. That's why I bring up Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was a borderline starter that didn't have to do it for an entire season. He just needed to do it for a handful of games, and he had an elite team around him. But yes, if you have an elite team, I'll bet you, like non-starting, like if you gave me the I don't know, the 49ers or the best roster in football or a team like Kansas City. I'm guessing that outside of the elite quarterbacks, dude, there's probably 15 guys that you could throw in there that you could, if you got on a heater and the defense played well and he played a great 3-game stretch, you could win with. But you just have to have all the pieces in place. The crazy one about Philadelphia is in the biggest moment, their defense let them down. Well, except for the sack at the end, but New England went up and down the field. They couldn't stop the Patriots. It's just that the mighty Bill Belichick, if you want to say that there was one Super Bowl that was on Bill, it's that one. Because, his defense kept them in a lot of games. They were mostly low scoring. That was the one Super Bowl where his offense was great and his defense completely no-showed. I mean, Philly just went up and down the field on him.
Well, rest in peace, Nick Foles. He is retiring.
With $73 million and a Big Johnson and a Super Bowl ring, and will never have to buy another meal in Philadelphia again.
That's crazy. $73 million, a statue, a Super Bowl ring, and what else did you say? He put the USDA stamp on his dong? Oh, a big dong.
Yeah, I mean, remember after that, all the players were talking about how
Life
he
is good.
He was Big D. He was Big D Nick. And when an NFL locker room nicknames you that, come on. Dude, you're in an NFL locker room, there's some Shankos walking around. So Nick's doing just fine. He's probably got a hot wife. And he made a Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champ.
Tell you what, somebody brings up Geno Smith.
Yes.
Look, that's a great one because
great one.
if the Seahawks do make a run with Geno Smith, I don't think they will because of, Geno Smith.
Yeah.
But if they do, great one.
Yes.
Great point.
100%. Geno could absolutely, he could be that guy. If you put an elite team, and I don't think Seattle's elite enough, but Geno could be a guy. Like if Geno was this and he was a backup in Kansas City, if Geno Smith was the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Francisco 49ers, in fact, the year that Purdy's elbow went noodle on him, Geno Smith as the backup on that team, they could have won a Super Bowl.